So there is probably nothing that is worse than being taken for granted by a guy. So what does it mean to be taken for granted by a guy? It means that he's far less likely to be attracted to you. He's far less likely to fall in love with you or open up to you or allow himself to fall in love with you. He's far less likely to look at you as somebody that he wants to be with for a long-term committed relationship or forever, if that's what you're looking for. And so you want to make sure that you're not making mistakes that might end up kind of dropping your value in his eyes, even if you're doing it mistakenly. And there's some certain things that no matter who you are, no matter what country you're from, no matter what part of the world you're in, no matter whether you're young or old or what race you are, these things will actually lower your value in a man's eyes and make him start taking you for granted, even if he doesn't want to, even if he absolutely loves you from the beginning. And so, hi, my name is Matthew Coast, and welcome to Helena Hart's channel. I'm here with her today, and we're going to be talking about four surprising, shocking things. What were they again, Helena?
4 surprising things that make a man lose attraction and take you for granted, even if he loves you. And I just say how much I love having you on my channel, Matt. I was about to open my mouth and introduce you, and you just took the whole thing for me. And that just like made my whole day right there. So thank you for that amazing introduction. I love that. And
Yeah,
hi to everyone watching. We already have 100 people watching, just a minute in. So this is a great topic. We know you guys are going to absolutely love this. For those of you who don't know Matt, do I introduce you now?
Yeah, go ahead and introduce me.
Matthew Coast is the creator of the Forever Woman formula. He's one of my best friends in the entire world and partner in crime. We've worked together we were just saying, about 3 years now, and created all kinds of amazing things. We have an amazing community over on Facebook together called the Goddess Community, and everyone loves your advice, Matt. I'm so thrilled to have you here, and we're going to kind of both talk about this together today, right?
Yes, we are going to talk about it together for sure. So, do you want to get started with it?
Do you want me to do the first one? We didn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll take the first one.
The second one is trying to make things as easy as possible for a man. And so what this looks like is doing things for him or making it really easy to meet up with you, or planning things out for him so that he doesn't have to do those things, and going out of your way to make things as easy as humanly possible for a guy. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course you want to, relationship, you're working together and everything. So this isn't about, making a man do everything and coming from this place of entitlement or anything like that. But in general, if you are rearranging your schedule to see him because he's the guy you really like, right? And so you have plans, but he's only available last minute. And so you kind of drop your plans with your girlfriends or your family to run over and see him. If you're always the one driving to him, paying for everything every single time, planning the dates, and basically all he has to do is show up. I know you talk about this a lot, Matt. Men are happy to just show up and take whatever you have to give. Some men will just take everything you got, but that doesn't mean that he's investing in the relationship the same way you're investing, right? So he needs to be putting that effort into. I know you have so many great things to say about that. I would love to hear any insights. I know you could talk forever about this.
I could talk forever about this one. Yeah, it's one of those things where you start doing stuff like that, and one of the things that one of the reasons why a man will be in a relationship, even if it's not like an actual relationship, if it's just a casual situationship or any of that kind of stuff, one of the reasons why he will be in that is purely for convenience, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happens is a lot of times there's red flags, right? And we talk about some of these red flags that you should be watching out for, and what that's supposed to look like, and how a man is supposed to behave if he's actually really interested in you. And you're going to end up missing all of those red flags if you're the one that's doing everything. Yeah. Right. So if you're doing everything, you're missing out on the fact that he's not even that interested. And so what's going to end up happening is you're going to be doing all these things and you're investing. And there's something out there called the sunken cost,
Yeah.
right? It's called the sunken cost principle. And what it means is that the more invested somebody is in something, the more they feel like they don't want to let go of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of different examples that you can use of this. One that I use is usually of a car, right? I used to have this Jeep, and it wasn't even that great of a Jeep. I mean, I bought it, and it like was falling apart all the time. And at one point it was like, I either had to junk it or I had to spend like $10,000 to fix it. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And so I was like, you know what? The idea of going out there and buying another car was like, just to me was like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put some money into it. And after I put that money into it, it was like the car kept breaking down, right? And just getting worse and worse and worse. But I was like, but I put so much money into this. I've spent more money on it, fixing it than the amount of money that I spent buying it and all that kind of stuff. And what ended up happening was I was like, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't want to get rid of this because I've invested myself so much into it, right? And that's what happens with us in relationships or anything that we do. It's a really common thing in investment strategy, right? So people will spend money on a stock, right? And they do a bunch of research on it, and they know that this is the perfect stock, but the stock is going down, 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 down. But they're like, no, I've done the research. I know this is the greatest stock. I've, spent so much time and energy and whatever in researching this stock. I know it's the right one, but it just keeps going down and down and down and down. And they end up losing everything on it, right? And they're like, confused and baffled. And a whole bunch of psychologists were like, why does this happen? Right. And so they looked at it and they found it's from the sunken cost principle, right? They get so invested in this thing that they don't want to let go of it. They know that at a certain point they're supposed to sell, right? And they know, at different points they're supposed to buy and sell things, but it hits that point and they just hold on because they've spent so much time and energy and effort and emotion and all these things into that stock. Well, you want to be like that stock, right? You want him to invest his time and energy and emotion and all of those different things into you, because that proves and that shows that he really values you. And there's a whole bunch of different principles, psychological principles that go behind this, right? I love psychology. It's literally one of my most favorite topics in the entire world. But the other thing that's there is this commitment consistency thing, right? If somebody spends time, that's why it's so important what frames are around the relationship, because the longer somebody spends doing something in a relationship, the more they feel like that's the normal, and they feel like that's something they're expected to do, and that's something that they will do, and the less time they spend doing those kinds of things, the less they feel that that's expected, and the less likely they are to start doing those things. And so you want a guy to start doing those things from the very beginning, because if he's investing in you and he's doing all these things in you, your value raises in his eyes because he's put so much into you. He feels like he's invested in you, so he doesn't want to let you go. He's been doing this thing over and over and over again. The principle for that is called commitment and consistency. It's a principle from Dr. Robert Cialdini from Arizona State University. And what happens is he continues to do it, and he sees you as this valuable and amazing woman that he wants to have in his life forever. And so it's very important that, if you're doing those things, right? One, you're going to be the one that feels that way towards him, which there's nothing wrong with, right? Like sometimes we'll get women on our channels and they'll be like, I feel like with all these rules that you guys have, I have to walk on eggshells. And it's not extreme, right? We're not talking about extremes here. We're not talking about you have to do it this way every time, and you should never invest in him, and you should never go into convincing mode, and you should never show neediness, never show weakness, right? Like we're not saying that at all, right? Like we're all human beings, and it's normal to have different things. But if you spend a lot of time trying to make things easy for him and trying to convince him and doing everything for him and all that kind of stuff, then what ends up happening is you end up being incredibly invested in him. He's not invested in you. You're missing red flags. The frame and precedence around the relationship is totally different than what you want it to be. And your value goes down in his eyes and you're wondering what's going on. Right. And so what Helena teaches specifically in the program that's linked to in this video is all about how to make sure that you're setting things up the right way so that he's investing in you. He's, moving towards you. He's showing whether there are red flags there or not. And you're making sure that there's a communication around the relationship. There's the frame around the relationship that's going in the direction of the type of relationship that you ultimately want to have, where he values you, he thinks you're amazing, he thinks you're awesome, and all that kind of stuff. I feel like I went off on a rant there.
Amazing. No, I am so glad you said that it's not about walking on eggshells and never making a mistake. It's like nothing we say is like super black and white, right? So number 3 is trying to show a man that you're a great catch and having this be like the undercurrent of every single interaction with him. Of course, when you show up, you want to, be your best self in life. But when you're doing things like trying to make a man jealous or subtly hinting that there's other men interested in you or anything like that, where you're just like constantly trying to show him your value, you've already kind of lost value, right? That actually decreases your value in a man's eyes, because the truth is a high value woman doesn't need to do or say anything to convey or demonstrate her value to a man. He's going to see it and know who you are and be interested, and he's going to want to pursue you, right? I mean, that's certainly been my experience, my opinion, and what I hear from all the amazing women in my community. You don't have to really do a lot of things to try to constantly show him you're a great catch and show him how great the two of you would be together, and tell him how amazing, what a great girlfriend or wife you would be, or how beautiful your kids would be together, right? So Matt, what do you have to say on this? Trying to show a man constantly that you're a great catch.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Because you look at it and you're like, okay, well, how does he know that I'm valuable if I don't show him that I'm valuable, right? And it's actually like, if you think about people who are like high value people, like high status people, celebrities, people like that, right? Like wealthy business owners and stuff like that. They aren't out there, most of them aren't out there trying to prove to people that they're valuable. If somebody comes along, that person that's coming along has to prove themselves in order to get to the person. But the person that's valuable is like, you have to prove to me that I should meet with you. You have to prove to me that I should spend some of my incredibly valuable time hanging out with you, right? That's what a high value person does, is they have people come to them. Those people have to get through gatekeepers, and then they have to prove that it's worth that high value person's time in order to be with them, right? And so it's kind of a counterintuitive thing, right? If you start trying to prove your value, that's the only person that tries to prove their value is somebody who doesn't believe that they're valuable, right? If you believe that you're valuable, you don't try to prove anything to anybody, because you don't feel like you have to, because you already know that you're valuable. And people that are like high value people that believe that they're valuable, there's like this recognition when they meet each other, right? Because they don't try to prove their value to each other, right? They just talk in certain ways and they interact with each other in certain ways. And what happens is that when they're interacting with each other, they're like, oh, you're one of me, right? You're one of us. You're one of these high value people, right? We can hang out with each other, right? Whereas if you're a celebrity, right, and somebody comes up to you and they're like, oh my gosh, Helena Hart, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm seeing you right now. You're the most amazing person ever, right? What they're communicating to you is, you're really amazing and really valuable. I'm this peon that, isn't nearly as valuable as you are. Please grace me with your presence, right? Whereas if a celebrity meets another person and that person's just like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Like, yeah. I think I've seen your show before or whatever, like that's pretty cool. Like I can really respect that. Right. All of a sudden, that's a completely different dynamic that's happening there, because it goes from this person that doesn't believe they're valuable and, acting like a stalker weirdo type of thing, to all of a sudden it's like, two people that are valuable people and respect each other have met, and we can talk on high value terms and realize that we're, not trying to compete for value. We can realize that we're not, that we're not one above the other. We're two human beings just hanging out, and we realize that we're two human beings just hanging out, instead of trying to, fight in the value landscape, right? And so it's I don't know if that makes sense to
Totally
you,
makes
but
sense.
it's
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
you have to not try you. People that are valuable and believe that they're valuable don't try to prove their value to anybody. They don't try to show that they're a catch. They don't try to do any of that kind of stuff, right? Because they don't feel like they have to, and they don't have to.
Exactly. You just took the words right out of my mouth. That women and men too, who truly know their value, know they don't have to do or say anything to show a man how valuable they are. He's just going to see that right away. And again, this is not about just being entitled and just being like, you need to prove yourself to me and treat me like a queen, and here's my list of requirements. Obviously, you need that softness and vulnerability. So it's not about being better than anyone, but you want to think of yourself as like, you are the star of your own movie. You're the star of your own life. You're not like just some fan trying to get into a man's movie, if that makes sense. I don't know why that analogy just came to me right now. You're not like trying to convince a guy or show him that you're worthy enough to be in his movie. You're the star of your own movie. If you treat a man like you're a fan of his, and he's just energetically just puts you in this position below him. And we see this all the time in questions like, he pulled away. How do I get him back? What strategies can I use to try and, make him like me the way he used to? And it's like, you can just feel the energetic difference. Like, he's up here, he's holding something that you want, and he's not giving it to you. Like, he's holding some key to your happiness. And so a woman who truly was confident and knew her value wouldn't have time for a man who was interested in other women or unsure of his feelings about her. She just would be on her path, and she'd be trusting that the right guy, if he's really for her, is going to want to jump on that path with her, right? And so I love what you said about two people who are comfortable with themselves and know their value. These things don't come into play, really, right? There isn't like, how do I show him that I'm valuable? You won't have to do that with the right person. And a lot of these go both ways too, right, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All of these go both ways, right? That's what we're talking about. Like, a lot of times, and I get this so much, it's ridiculous, right? Because I do a lot of stuff on Facebook. And so we have women that'll come and they'll be like, well, what about what a guy has to do for me? And it's like, well, relationships are all both ways. I never, like, I know that we're giving advice to women about connecting with men and creating the relationships they want with men, but relationships always go both ways.
Oh, yeah.
And a man should be courting you. That's literally what we're teaching, right? So if I'm saying, here's some compliments that you can use with a guy, right? It's not, oh, you have to, please the man and he should be on this pedestal and he doesn't have to do anything. That's not what I'm saying at all, right? If you're with a man who isn't treating you right, who's not connecting with you, who's not complimenting you and loving you and doing great things with you and on a level of partnership, then why are you even with him?
Oh, yeah.
And why aren't you communicating what it is that you absolutely want? And why aren't you willing to put yourself in a position where you're willing to walk away if it's not going to be what you want?
Absolutely. Totally agree. 100%. I love everything you said. Number 4 is always being the one to initiate contact and keep things going. And I hear this so often. Women say, if I stop always being the one to text him and call him and make plans and reach out to him, it's just going to fizzle. It's like they're just like frantically trying to like keep it together because they feel that this man is kind of like one foot out the door, and just one wrong move will send him out the door completely. Or if they're not always initiating contact and keeping things going or keeping things together, that he's gonna like slip through their fingers. And can you just feel how just unbalanced that is. It's like that he's up here and you're below him energetically, just trying to hold on to him. So this looks like trying to keep the conversation going, right? When it's clearly ended, it looks like, just trying not to let him slip away. If you haven't heard from him, feeling that anxious urge to reach out and keep things going. Matt, I know you probably have a lot to say on this too. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, we've talked a lot about some of the things that this involves, and right, all the things that we've talked about so far today are all about, believing in your own value, positioning yourself in value, and communicating your own value, right? And there's another thing about this kind of initiation of contact all the time, right? Like if you it's not like what we talked about earlier. Like, it's not a problem if you're initiating contact sometimes, right? It's actually can be a really good thing, and it can show him that you're interested and make him want to pursue you more.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it all the time and you're like, oh, I got to be in constant contact with this guy. There's this other law that I like that I don't like it. It's one of my least favorite laws in the entire world. I hate this law. Hate is a very strong word, but I hate this law. And this law is called the law of familiarity. And the law of familiarity states that the more that you're around someone, the more that you spend your time around somebody, the more familiar they will start to become with you, and the more that they will just naturally start taking you for granted. I know that's really sad. It's a sad law. It makes me cry at night. It's sad, right? Because it's one of those things. Like one of my favorite things in the world is pulled pork. And when I was living in Colorado, I had every kind of way to make pulled pork that you could think of. I had smoker, and we do oven pulled pork, and we do slow cooker pulled pork, and all kinds of pulled pork. And I'd get a big, like a big pork shoulder, and I'd cook it up, right? And I would have so much pulled pork that I could literally eat it for like a week and a half because it was so much. Well, after day 2 of eating pulled pork for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'm like, do I really like pulled pork anymore? When am I ever going to want to eat pulled pork anymore? Right? And I'll end up taking the pulled pork and I'll put it in the freezer. And then, a couple days later, I'm like, it sounds really good. Pulled pork, right? And then I'll eat some more, right? But if I'm eating it all the time, what ends up happening, and it's constantly in front of me and I'm eating it for every single meal, I get sick of it, right? I'm like, I want something different. I want something a little bit different. That's the law of familiarity, right? Because you're having it around. And that's why there's something that I call the scarcity principle, which is creating some space, right? You create some space and you give him some space. And one of the best ways to do this is just to start becoming comfortable with silence, with no contact with each other, right? With just being apart, a little bit apart. This is what I talk about when I talk about positioning yourself in value, right? And I used to talk about this idea of like creating your own life, but I think more accurately, it is pronounced as creating your own identity. Because what researchers have found is that when 2 people are in a relationship, what ends up happening is their identities mold together and they start feeling like they're one person, right? Which is why a breakup is so devastating for so many people, because one person walks away and the other person, they feel like they've lost a part of their identity. They lost a part of who they are, right? And the way to stop that from happening and to counteract the law of familiarity and to make sure that you're not smothering him and pushing him away is to give him some space, right? Is to start doing things that solidify and build your identity as a human being, right? And that makes you feel stronger and more capable, and it makes you feel less dependent on him. And so I have a bunch of different laws around or principles around this, right? The abundance principle, a principle of abundance of connection, abundance of options, I don't know. There's some other ones in there as well.
You
But
also give this great analogy, if you don't mind jumping. I want you to explain this with the fire that needs space, it needs oxygen. If you're constantly like throwing logs on the fire, you're gonna like snuff it out. Can you talk about that a little bit as it relates to this?
yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different metaphors that I actually have
Mm-hmm.
for this one. And one of them is the fire, right? And
Yeah.
the idea is that when you're starting a fire, and I don't know if you guys are fire starting nerds like I am, but I've started quite a few fires in my life. And when you start a fire, you initially have to put little twigs on it, right? And if you
Mm-hmm.
throw pieces of wood that are too big on it, it'll just smother the fire. Sometimes you want like little paper or like little leaves or like grass or like hay or something like that. And you know, you have to give it some space. You have to give it some oxygen. You have to let it build and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you can put a little bit bigger logs on it, you know, like little pieces of wood on it, and then a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And then if you give it enough space and you just feed it, you know, every once in a while it's kind of big, right? That's the key, is that you put a little bit on, it grows bigger, and while it's big, you put more on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of goes down a little bit, and then it gets bigger, and then you put more on, and it goes down a little bit and gets bigger, and you put more on, and it just does that over and over and over again until you've got a bonfire, right?
Yeah.
And how hard is it to put a bonfire out, right? It's nearly impossible, right? You got to
Mm-hmm.
dump buckets of water on it in order to put it out. And that's kind of what love is like, with creating love with a man, right? You want to make sure that you're not smothering it. You're not putting too much in. You're just waiting for it to grow and put on some more, and then you wait for it to grow, right? And it sizzles down a little bit and then comes back up. And that is really what you want to do in terms of the attention and connection that you have with a man.
Totally. I love that. Is that everyone's loving the fire analogy? Yeah, I think that's so helpful, because I know as women, it can be easy to, you know, oh, there's been a little space. I haven't heard from him all day, and we get anxious. Then we start searching for what we should do. Right. And it's like, there's so much. A lot of women think they're leaning back into their feminine energy, but they're actually not. They're actually very much leaning forward mentally by obsessing about a man and thinking about him constantly when he's not right in front of her or contacting her, rather than just being okay with a little space, a little silence, a little, you know, you don't want to constantly be, you know, like this, right? It's more of a dynamic thing. I know you talk about something called connection cycling, I believe, in the Forever Woman formula, right? Where isn't one of the steps in the connection cycling like giving it space or starting it all over again or something like that?
Well, it's actually the program that's in is a program that I have called the Obsession Formula.
Okay.
And basically the connection cycling, what that is that's exactly what it is. In psychology and neurolinguistic programming, they call it fractionation. In like medicine and physical therapy, what they do is, it's like when you if you've ever been to physical therapy before, which I have a couple of times, just for being an idiot sometimes, and sometimes because I was actually hurt, and sometimes it was getting hurt being an idiot. And like for instance, one of the times I had some lower back problems, right? And what they do is they will stretch your leg. Right. And the first time they stretch your leg, they pull it up and they'll push it, and it goes, you know, like not that far back. Right. And so they'll do it for like a, you know, little bit, right? Like 15 seconds or something. And they'll pull it back down, and then they'll push it again. Right. And the second time they push it further.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then they come back again. And then the third time it's even further. Right. And that's kind of like what connection cycling is. Right. Is it, you start off kind of on the superficial level and you go a little bit deep with him, right? But then you pull back, you give him space, but the next time you get together and you connect, you're able to go deeper with him than you were before, because you gave him some space and you let him rest for a minute, and then it goes deeper, and you keep doing that, and it keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper until he has these really deep, powerful emotions that he feels for you. Right, where he starts becoming obsessed with you, where he's thinking about you all the time, where he's, you know, falling in love with you, where he's sending you little notes, right, where he's writing you little things and giving them to you, right, and leaving them in your stuff, right. That's the kind of things that a guy will do once he starts feeling really strong emotional attraction for you?
Okay, love it. I love that. So good. These questions are phenomenal too.